Hey, hey, back with part two. My interview with good guy Jack Weenan. Hey, we left off. We talked about your Rob Ford days, your opponent at Rob Ford. So, gonna ask you a question. So you ran in 2018, 22, and this year 2023, right?
Nope. Uh, 14,
14, yeah.
14, 18, and 23.
Okay, here's my question for you. How has your philosophies and views changed from 2014, 18, 22 in those time periods? You said you view things differently.
Um,
Big question.
well, I mean, I went from a teenager to a man,
Yeah.
which comes with some fundamental differences of looking at the world. Um, wow. We've had so much happen in the last 12 years. We've had
Well, let's
how
go back
many
to 20,
how many
2014.
wars
You're
have
18,
broken
right?
out in that time?
2014, you're 18, starting off in politics.
What is the major political event that has shaped the evolution of my political philosophies? Probably Assange.
Signed, yeah.
Um, Probably COVID. Um, Probably um watching half of the grocers in my neighborhood close. Um, Probably living in France, definitely, especially at a municipal level.
Where'd you live in
Um,
France?
I've lived in Paris and I've lived in the South. In the South, I lived in a very, 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 very small village.
What's it called?
Azy.
Yeah.
Um,
And where
it
in
was
Paris did you live?
about 1,100 people. And then in
Where?
Paris, I've lived in the 14th, the 3rd, and the 10th. So, I mean, when you're a young person, to anyone that knows Paris, that's probably where you go hang out. So I was kind of living it up.
I'll pick your brain.
But
I'll be more specific, pick your brain more about the, not a case of the major things also. Well, you ran 2014, 18. So something compelled you to run each time. So how those things have changed between those three, just those three periods right there for yourself, you know?
the slash on city council and the slash on the provincial seats at the same time by the Ford government, by and far, is what I see as the largest deplatforming of people's agency. Like there's just we've gone up to approaching 150,000 people being represented by every elected official. I mean, like you can get elected with 10-15% of your electorate. Like that is just completely undemocratic. Um, so yeah, I'd say the biggest shift from 2014 to 18 was that. And then the biggest shift from 18 to 23 was watching COVID.
So how did that, well, 2014, 2014, 2018, how did that affect you personally? Like, what is that, what's your appeal to, like, what does it matter to you, like, that affect you in that big change for yourself?
I see the most important level of government being the home. After that, the community. After that, the municipality. After that, the provincial. After that, the national. After that, the international, and the NGOs. I don't give them any political weight in my hierarchy of needs. So in that kind of, say I flip the pyramid. A lot of us think of the international and the nation being these utmost important things. And I think given the fact that we've moved into a post-nationalist world, right? I mean, we've really moved beyond the simple idea of the nation state. We've really moved into this identity driven moving towards transhumanist future. And I think that the best way that everyone can win, I mean, everyone can't win, but the best way for some form of real equity or equality or whatever word you choose not to be offended by, to come forward would be valuing the family, the home, the community, the municipality, because that's what you see. When I go out of my front door, I, I, as much as it can sound, hugely ignorant, and I've been accused of this a million times and probably will be a million times again. As much as it is easy to accuse someone of, being ignorant or insensitive for not caring about what's not in front of them, most people don't ever get to see really beyond the confines of their community. That's what is the most important and most noticeable thing in your life, is what's around you. And if we keep paying attention to Donald Trump in Canadian politics, if we keep paying attention to like the Eastern conflicts in Canadian politics, that's not helping us municipally. And if we aren't able to hold it down municipally, how are we supposed to hold it down internationally, especially as we're moving past these ideas of nationalism, past these ideas of clannish belonging? It's not I'm a Torontonian, it's I'm this intersectional figure within Toronto, I am this. And sorry, I'm not. I'm from Toronto. I was born here, I was raised here, I've lived abroad, I've lived as an immigrant, if we want to go that route. But I mean, I'm from Toronto, I'm a Torontonian, this is my city. I'm not feigning to be, a citizen of Kyiv in 2023. I meet them, I'll talk to them, and I'm sure that like this, we can have a really good conversation where something happens in our minds or in our actions or in our beliefs. But I mean, first and foremost, I'm from here. That's why I'm running for mayor of here, not mayor of, Turin.
You pick Turin? How'd you pick that one? That's funny.
I have absolutely no idea why I picked that one.
It was a Turkish relation from the first interview. Turkish thing, Turin. That's right. I thought Turin. That's Italy. We're talking about Turin, Italy. But I have to go back to about the you said earlier before in the first interview about the community spirit. And we mentioned it on phone about the lack of community input during this by-election. The public lack of public opinion. There's also the representatives, the 102 candidates putting their names in to represent that lack of opinion, right? In so many words, People make jokes about the 102 candidates, say, oh, you're all a bunch of, just get your name in there. But, think about the people that ran last year, like myself, still want to do good. But make it so hard. Just make it so hard for people to run and just not just me, as last year, the candidates for award. I'm out of the 80, over 80, I know about 40 of them personally, and through the internet and meeting in person, and I get the same gist, like we want to do good, but we just can't be heard, and they don't want to take us serious. They don't want change. And then the attitude is, why bother voting? It's nothing to change. But if you don't, view things differently, that can't be possible, right? Well, you've seen yourself in your community, things that couldn't be done now are done, like yourself. I was going to ask you when do you remember your first volunteered in your community as a person, a young guy?
So as volunteering, I as a teenager, from I think I was 14, I started sailing on this ship in the harbor, called Pathfinder, sister ship Playfair. They're part of an organization called Toronto Brigantine. Actually, good story there about how Toronto has made a lot of choices to alienate community. Toronto Brigantine is a sailing organization based on two tall ships that does sail training and seamanship training for teenagers, 13 to 18, around the Great Lakes. And it is a charity. So I worked with them for years, past finishing the program as an alumni. And that's been a really meaningful charity to me. There were times where there were years and whole months on the ship where we'd have Children's Aid was sending us a lot of kids back in the day. We've had it's a great organization. I recommend anyone listening to look into it. They've renamed Briggs. It's Briggs.org now. Just a really fantastic organization, very youth-centered. And they've brought up boys and girls too. I mean, I've known women that have come out of that program so strong, so independent. And in a sport background, in a sailing background, in a living in a military-like structure on a ship background, typically girls get their voices squashed in those environments, and then the ship is definitely a good example of a environment where that didn't happen as much, especially now. I mean, the new leadership in that program is above and beyond, and part of the new leadership in that program that has done very good for that program, that done very well for that program. One of the ways in which they did well for that program was by removing it from Toronto. And that's where I see the issue with the city is we had this fantastic youth-centric program that was developing skills and trades and navigational skills, which immediately translated to six-figure jobs for a lot of my friends through this program. It was based downtown at Union Station, and we had kids coming in from Peterborough, everywhere. And the city relocated the program, I think 5 times, from 90 and change until 2010. And then finally they got relocated to the Portlands, way off yonder at Cherry Street, which is now obviously under development and has been completely terraformed.
So what's the reason they did that? Why did they keep why didn't they just leave it as is?
The city did not consider this organization, economically viable. It didn't consider it an important part of the community. And this is an organization based in Toronto that has been operating out of Toronto since the 1960s. There are thousands of inner city kids that have gone through this program and come out the other side as licensed seamen, licensed sailors, licensed cargo ship operators, licensed mechanics, and getting licensed as teenagers through this program and coming out immediately into six-figure jobs. Toronto just essentially told the program repeatedly, we don't have space for you. We don't want to give you dock space. We want to encourage a for-profit company to come take up this dock space. And there was an annual general meeting. I forget the year. It was a couple years ago, and it wasn't a sweeping vote, but the vote was to move to Hamilton. And the reason for that was that they had families moving in, they had communities growing, they had small businesses growing, they had a city council and a harbor committee that was interested in developing the harbor for the use of pleasure and commercial balanced. It was just, there were so many good reasons for them to move, and there were so many good reasons for Hamilton to adopt them. But all of those good reasons were almost directly a result of Toronto's bad reasoning. Like, I challenge anyone to find a summer camp for kids involving sailing
Yeah.
that costs $1,500 for 4 years of summer camp, where your child is certified with a trade at the end of it. Like, these are essential community organizations, and the city does not have the time or space for any of them. Whether it's, the sailing community that I've worked with, and the Kensington market that I know and love, or whether it's your neighborhood and whatever I don't know about what they're undermining in your life. It's everyone I talk to has the
So
same problem.
yeah,
It's
so
well,
this
my
organ,
community had space and it was
yeah,
taken away. And it was given to another community who felt that they deserved the space for no better reason than we had it.
for profit, right?
And quite often for a profit. Yeah.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. But this organization really helped you, like, would you say they'll help you develop as a better guy inside, or just
Oh,
you?
they made me the man I am. Absolutely.
It's amazing,
Absolutely.
you know.
Yeah.
And you still talk to people from the organization like they are all adults, grown up, and you still talk to them.
Oh, I'd say most of my best friends are from through that program. I I moved I moved around a little bit as a kid. Um, and when I found myself um changing schools almost every year, there was there was a difficulty that I think is understandable for most kids. And it was through the other kids in Kensington Market, and it was through these kids through the extracurricular programs that I was able to remove myself from the pressures of school and develop real friendships. I think largely due to the pressures of public school, you have a huge amount of pressure on you that, like, to perform, to act out, to act within, to act without, and that pressure really hindered me socially. And I think that the extracurricular is what allowed me to have a good, healthy life outside of the communities that I was placed into. I could choose those communities. And when you have access to that in your city, you've got a healthier city, mentally, physically, all of it. Trying to think of places that are really doing well in our city, and overwhelmingly I'm thinking skate parks. Or there's the dirt park too at High Park and Lakeshore. I think it's Ellis. And then there's the skate park at Lakeshore and Carlaw. And there are these outdoor spaces. They're increasingly outdoor. That are serving as these de facto community centers, where 7-year-old kids are learning from 22-year-old kids who are learning from 16-year-old kid, and it's creating a healthy environment for them, where they don't have those pressures of school and home shaping the way that they choose to express their community and their identity.
I bike by the old, like on the one on Lakeshore you're talking about, the
Yeah.
going there. I was gonna ask you. I talked to some of the parents there. I asked them, do they have any kind of like a curriculum, like like events, competition in local, like doing some of the other cities around the states, like not just practicing and having fun, but just also enticing kids and learning from the adults, the older kids and all. And it's just, they don't have that. They have the community standards, but not specifically like say a competition of where you practice and you're gonna have like, well, like in sailing, they have practice and they have competitions. Competitive spirit among youths is a big factor, I think. Makes you
Yeah.
more, yeah, it makes you more responsible, makes you learn about loss, moving on from loss, and just being a better person inside. when you accept failure in yourself, then you're actually improving yourself at the same time, right? Rather than denying it, because we live like in, we watch all these talk shows and all these, not talk these game shows, and the whole judging and all the perfect ambience of being on TV or putting on the perfect performance, and failure is a no-no. Anything less than being on that show is no good. You know what I mean? Like my nephews and nieces. I know I love them all, but sometimes a couple of them have a hard time just admitting failure. Just not failure, just like they didn't win or didn't succeed at something. But you gotta move on. It's part of life. And it gets so. My one, the youngest nephew, he gets so frustrated whenever he loses. It's hilarious. He's funny, but that's from, like I said, pressure from school. He went to a public school, a couple of them, and he felt that pressure all the time. But there's no, where he lives right now in Bowmanville. He hasn't reached out to anything that's gonna pick on that insecurities and just accentuate it, make it better, and build on that. Like you had that opportunity, that organization, right? It's nice to talk about that. I forgot all about the program there, but it's funny. But you said like it's all for profit. They put these, or the thing is, the philosophy has changed that fact, put these organizations there for profit, which is the wrong thing to do, right? Nonprofit, we talked about before, we mentioned this, but nonprofit. What happened to nonprofit? Nonprofit is such a big influence on that's cultures, the neighborhoods, and also the housing, homelessness, you know, anybody that has to do with poverty, anything that has to do with struggling, and when they deal with what's going on, they see what's out there, and they don't want to. It's like they're kind of get pushed out, with all this stuff being built around the city and all. They're pushing the regular, I say regular people though, because most of the voters are all like below poverty or what, below 60 grand or whatever. Like out in Scarborough, like the majority vote. They're all working 3 or 4 jobs, big families, skipping meals. You've seen this, going to food banks. This is the thing, right? This is
Yeah.
what we'll become. Food banks not, was just a temporary
See,
thing.
food banks are interesting to me too. So I live on the same street as the Fort York Food Bank at
Oh,
College
yeah,
and
okay.
Dunning.
So you've seen what's going on over there.
And right across from the food bank is the encampment on my street, in front of the church. And this stuff keeps me up at night. I mean, it is heart-wrenching. My cousin, as well as myself, have both in the last 3 months found someone that we were extremely close with, working, successful, entering the encampments permanently.
Oh,
We've seen the food bank line go from probably an average 15 to about an average 80 in the mornings.
that Fort York, that's a newer,
And
it's one of the newer
yeah,
food banks. Yeah.
yeah, it's and it we're as a community, and this is where I'm perplexed by this. As a community, we're celebrating it. And I I don't see the food bank and the church renting porta potties, but not allowing the homeless to use indoor showers. Like this kind of superfluous benevolence, this kind of like, it's sanctimonious virtue signaling, where it's we're coming together as a community, but we're not. We are giving something, usually money, to feel better about not having to do anything as a community.
Yeah.
Like the answer for this community isn't feed them and put them in the park. Right? The answer for this community is seeing them as the members of our community, my cousin's friend, my friend, who fell off the wagon during COVID. And like that, it's we get it. So we're confounding the issues of community resilience and community support with passing the torch on, passing the load onto somebody else's back. And liking and donating to your community page does not, when I'm talking about being engaged in your community, I'm not talking about donating to your friend's birthday drive to feel good about the food bank rather than you taking them out for dinner. I think that it's actually probably better that you take your friend out for dinner and listen to them.
You know, what's
So
really
that
funny
you
is,
don't end up at
you
the
know,
home.
what's so ironic is just north of there is the TIFF going on. It's
Yeah.
TIFF. And I got two friends that work catering there. And they tell me, you know what? We could open our doors, bring the people in the food banks lining up, we'll feed them. They can throw so much food out like you wouldn't believe. And that's just
Yeah.
ironic. Below on one street, they're starving, lining up. Right above them, 3 streets up, wasting food, going dump in the dumpster there. We're talking good
Yeah.
food here. Yeah, and just that's ironic. Yeah, I know what you mean. Like we're pay the bucks and all. What's that word? NIM, not in my backyard. It's kind of like that. Said, you know, like
NIMBY.
I'll do yeah, I'll donate to your cause, and but just don't get around me, right? Don't be around me, you know. But well, what's your solution there, Jack, with all this? Not just show and tell, and, you know, putting on the press and like we're doing this drive and all that stuff, and no, it's not enough. What would you do as a person if you had the authority to do something? What would you do?
I won't, I won't make an empty promise. I
Yeah,
won't do that. Do I have the solution? No.
no, okay. Any ideas?
Can
What
I
could we
think, can I think of a solution for my friend, or could my cousin think of a solution for their friend, understanding their situation intimately?
Yeah,
Yes. Can I find a solution for 40 grown ass adults who make their own life choices and have their own views and opinions about the world? No. Individually, can their friends think of a good path for them individually? Yeah, I think, yeah. So again, these really come down to having the conversations. The encampments are especially tricky, and obviously, I brought them up because I see it right out that window
well, you
every
mentioned that one
single day, and it's getting
showers.
so much worse, so much faster.
Yeah, porta potty
Um,
shower, lack of showers. You know, like
yeah, like so the church at the corner,
which is that the same church that was on the
it's
news? That's a different church,
it's
right?
St. Stephen's in the Fields, Anglican church. It was the private chapel of the Dennison family back in the day. Um, but the church currently has a space up for rent, an office space for rent, for profit within the church. I don't know if they've found a tenant for that yet. The church has a toilet and shower and kitchen facilities, and the church has indoor space that would comfortably accommodate 40 sleeping. And consistently, the church has bought tents, left them outside, has consistently ordered porta potties to get switched out, has made calls to private and nonprofit and community organizations to come deliver food. And all of this is being done in the good name of the church, but ultimately they have showers, they have indoor toilets with rolls of toilet paper and not a stack of brown porta potty. They have the ability to hire a security guard for less than they spend on all of the extras to make sure that people aren't overdosing in their church, but instead the virtue signaling that they're helping these people. And meanwhile, but by helping them, they're asking them to sleep outside in -25 all winter, and they're still there, the same faces of the same people.
And meanwhile,
It's
the church is empty, the basement.
Yeah, and like I understand that a lot of people don't want to take temporary housing. You get promised housing for 2 weeks in
Yeah,
order to get out of the park,
yeah.
so that we can give you hell next time you end up in a park after kicking you out of your housing that we gave you for 2 weeks. That's not a solution. That's not a solution. I completely agree with them there. That is not a solution that works. And if that's the solution that's being offered, tough. There's an element of me that would be really interested in seeing how this encampment would go in Rosedale.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Diane Sachs is our counselor. I watched her evict 700 people at that meeting that I went to, the last city meeting I went to. She's not exactly, I'd be interested to see how her approach and how her lobbying the city would change if
Well, what's the reason why they evicted the 700 people? What's that reason for that?
just your I was just at a meeting. They're just doing your standard rent evictions.
Evictions.
No, I think they basically evict about 700 people a day in City Hall right now in the council chambers. It's I mean, don't quote me on that. I'm being
No, but
facetious.
there's, but what's
It's absurd. Let's tear down 640 units to build 710.
well, it's the thing they're talking about,
We'll include six low income units so that the
So
634 others can figure it out. So
let me ask you a bunch of questions here. Your views as mayor to be, running to be, maybe again in the future. So, do you think their promises the house so much housing by what 2030? Do you think they'll meet that promise?
is it possible? Yep.
It is possible, yeah.
Possible. Yep.
Realistically,
I think that money would be better spent in
well, I looked at some of
infrastructure,
the
making sure that the communities that they build don't turn into ghettos.
yeah, I looked at some
Chow,
of
chow.
their some of the mayor candidates, the well-known ones, and I like some of their stuff. But what I found lacking, people agree with this, with the housing, the promises, and what they want for housing, and how many, and a lot about, and where it's going to go is within consideration. There was the extra things that come into the play, like for example, refugees from natural disasters, uh,
Yeah,
increase
so
of
I was just
homelessness.
about to say, like, the one of the first moves Chow made this round, since her incumbency, was she announced the emergency building of, I forget the exact number of so many units and so many buildings to accommodate refugees. And let's look at, again, my hierarchy of municipal national importance here. We're taking in 450,000 a year. That's a national policy. Of that, 60% will come here with a level of education or a level of certified trade, or in any case, 60% of them will arrive here with a work permit. 40% of our projected migrants are going to be arriving either with asylum or refugee status. That means they can't work because of the national federal level policy. They can't work. And our mayor, seeing and understanding the extent to which we have housing and homelessness problems in the city, has committed to building X number of homes for people who don't have work permits, and these are going to be homes together. And it does not take a social science degree to figure out what happens when you get a large concentration of people living together without work permits from unstable backgrounds. I mean, I'm not even going to say the G word, because we all know what happens when you put a whole bunch of unstable people who cannot work legally in a building together. Like, the solutions that are being implemented are problematic more than they are solving the problem. And again, you've got this municipal issue that's huge. And you've got this federal issue that's affecting the municipality. And these two triangles are just opposed. And like, we love the word progressive, right? And we love the idea of progressive policy. And people like to consider themselves fiscal conservatives, because you can't have progressive policy without progressive economics. You can't have progressive policy with neoliberal globalist economics. You can't, I mean, those neoliberal globalism seems to be what people are calling progressive. But like, when you try and fit the two ideas together, I don't care if you want to advocate for, communism or libertarianism or democratic socialism or fascism. They aren't really compatible. And before we go seeking how to change the political landscape in order to change people's minds, we never really thought, maybe we should redirect our attention to our communities within our municipalities, figure out where people's minds are at, and then create an ideological framework for our policy that works for our people. Like, do we need to please Turin? Like, we're not Turin. Do we need a social policy that works well for Turin?
Yeah.
The way that it works well for Shanghai? Like, no, it's like we need a Toronto policy for Toronto. I mean, it doesn't need to work for Ottawa even. And that's the intersection that this election in particular, that's where it got really interesting for me, was what is the policy that works for Toronto independently, that also works for Ottawa independently, that also works for Kingston independently, but that comes from a centralized change due to the way that our government's structured. And that's decentralizing. That's, to me, decentralizing. And the best approach that I've seen that dedicated, intelligent professionals seem to have put together seems to be the case for a charter city. In the case of Toronto, if we had, and you can, anyone watching, please check them out, Charter City Toronto. They have been endorsed by several candidates. But ultimately, the idea that we could create an independence from the province, not through secession, which is divisive, but by just being able to secure our own funding for our own problems, either directly from the feds or by not releasing as many of our funds through the province, which ultimately go back to the feds and get redistributed back to us anyways.
Hey Jack, I got less than 1 minute left before this get cut off here. Let's say thanks for coming on the show. We're gonna do it again. You want to do another session next time or what? Love you talking
Yeah,
to you.
absolutely.
Yeah. When do you want to do that?
I'm hoping that the next 4 years that we continue these conversations.
I'm gonna get cut off here in a moment. But just want to say thanks for coming on the show. I love talking to you. Let's do it again. Let me know when you want to do another session and talk. Good conversation. Deep thoughts. And thanks for coming on the show. I'll give you send you the copies of from the Google, and I'll take it from there. So thank you, sir. Thank you for coming on the show. And
thank
nice
you,
talking
Philip.
to you. I hope
thank you for having these conversations.
I hope people learn from you, from your education, from educating people of the city, basically, It's nice. So anyways, I like the mustache, and I'll talk to you after.
Yeah, let me know if let your viewers know to let me know if I should keep it for the next election. It was a contentious issue